The history of the Amphicar is a story of ambitious engineering, post-war optimism, and the belief that the ordinary car should be capable of extraordinary feats. It remains the only mass-produced amphibious passenger car ever made commercially available to the public. The concept originated in West Germany. The car was the brainchild of Hans Trippel, a highly controversial but brilliant engineer who had a long history of developing amphibious vehicles for military use dating back to the 1930s. Trippel's lifelong goal was to create a reliable, dual-purpose vehicle that could transition seamlessly from road to water. After years of designing prototypes for various companies, he secured funding in the late 1950s to realize his ultimate civilian vision. Production began under the name Amphicar Corporation in 1961, with final assembly occurring at the Industriewerke Karlsruhe facilities in West Berlin and Lübeck. The car was designated the Model 770. The 770 designation was a marketing concept. The car was intended to reach a top speed of 7 knots in the water and 70 miles per hour on the road. This dual performance target defined the vehicle's unique design constraints. The technical challenge was immense. The car needed to be a capable road vehicle, yet maintain watertight integrity and propulsion in water. Trippel's team had to design a rigid, self-supporting steel hull. Propulsion on land was achieved using a conventional 4-cylinder engine from the British Triumph Herald 1200. This 1.1-liter engine was located in the rear of the vehicle, typical of the era's compact car designs. The engine produced a modest 43 horsepower, which was adequate for the road, but a significant compromise for the car's dual-purpose weight and bulk, contributing to its slightly underwhelming performance on both land and sea. The most critical engineering feature was the watertight hull. All doors, the bonnet, and the boot were sealed with heavy rubber gaskets, and the entire structure was designed to sit high above the waterline for stability. In the water, the wheels, though retracted slightly, remained down. They played a minor role in steering, but crucially contributed to the car's stability and acted as natural bumpers for docking. The Amphicar utilized a complex, multifunctional gearbox. It had 4 forward gears and reverse for the road, but also a separate, second lever for engaging the twin propellers for water propulsion. The twin propellers, mounted under the rear bumper, were individually reversible, allowing the car to steer effectively in the water by adjusting the thrust of each prop, although road steering via the front wheels was often more effective. The shift from road to water required the driver to perform a simple sequence: pull over, engage the propeller lever, and then enter the water via a shallow bank or ramp. The complexity was hidden by Trippel's elegant packaging. The U.S. market was the main target. Trippel partnered with an American distributor, and the car was introduced to the enthusiastic American public at the 1961 New York Auto Show, promising a revolution in leisure transport. The Amphicar received significant celebrity endorsement and media coverage. It was featured prominently in magazines and news reports, capturing the imagination of a public eager for novelty and new technology. Despite the hype, the Amphicar was expensive. At its launch, it cost approximately $3,300 in the U.S., making it significantly pricier than a standard, better-performing European sedan or a small conventional boat. Trippel positioned the Amphicar not as a mass-market car, but as a specialized leisure vehicle, a combined convertible and motorboat. This niche marketing approach was necessary to justify the high production costs. Early production models suffered from inevitable teething problems, mostly related to the complexity of maintaining watertight seals and the durability of the gearbox when used in dual mode. The Amphicar was subject to stringent new U.S. Coast Guard and safety regulations, requiring modifications to meet both automotive and marine safety standards, adding to the vehicle's overall weight and complexity. By 1962, the Amphicar was officially on sale globally, ready to prove that a car could indeed be the perfect vessel for a Sunday drive, whether on the highway or on the lake, establishing its place as one of the great automotive oddities.
The Amphicar entered full production in 1962 with high hopes of capturing the burgeoning American leisure market. The U.S. was the primary target, accounting for over 90% of all sales, a critical dependency for the German manufacturer. The car's sales strategy relied heavily on demonstrations, often featuring dramatic, high-profile river crossings in major cities. This novelty factor initially fueled demand among the wealthy and the eccentric. Perhaps the most famous owner was President Lyndon B. Johnson, who owned an Amphicar at his Texas ranch in the mid-1960s. Johnson famously used the car to play practical jokes on unsuspecting guests by pretending the brakes had failed as they approached a lake. Despite the political endorsement, the Amphicar's commercial performance was mixed. The promised 70 miles per hour on land was often difficult to achieve due to the car's heavy hull and aerodynamic resistance, leading to disappointing acceleration and top speed. The performance at sea was equally tepid. The 7 knots target was rarely met, and in choppy water or strong currents, the car struggled. Its low freeboard meant that any significant wave could easily spill into the cockpit, overwhelming the simple bilge pump. On the road, the vehicle's unique engineering created compromises. The steering column required a complex series of seals to maintain watertight integrity, resulting in a somewhat vague and heavy steering feel that was unlike conventional European sedans. Moreover, the drive axles were routed through the hull, requiring additional universal joints and seals, increasing mechanical friction and complexity. This meant the Amphicar required more frequent and specialized maintenance than a standard car. The biggest practical failure was the mandatory post-water maintenance. Every time the car was used in salt water, the owner was required to carefully grease 13 separate points on the undercarriage, including the wheel hubs and propeller shafts, to prevent rapid corrosion. This tedious maintenance, combined with the fact that most owners used the car sporadically, meant that corrosion was an enormous, widespread problem, severely affecting the long-term durability and value of the vehicles. The Amphicar's appeal was its duality, but this feature also contributed to its high operational costs. Fuel consumption, due to the weight and poor aerodynamics, was poor compared to contemporary compact cars. Safety also became a factor. While designed to float, the twin doors were crucial to the vehicle's buoyancy. If one was improperly latched, or if the seals failed, the car could rapidly take on water, posing a serious threat to occupants. The car did see some specialized commercial use. Several resorts and tour operators purchased fleets for novelty rides, and a few were bought by rescue services for niche, shallow water operations. By 1965, sales had begun to slow considerably. The novelty had worn off, and potential buyers were increasingly aware of the maintenance burden and the performance compromises compared to dedicated cars or boats. The German manufacturer, facing high per-unit production costs and diminishing returns, attempted to cut costs by seeking external investment and simplifying the manufacturing process, but the complexity remained a financial burden. The Amphicar was exported to over 20 countries, including the UK, France, and Canada, but sales outside of the US market remained marginal, reinforcing the American market's critical role in the car's survival. A brief attempt was made to update the vehicle with minor aesthetic changes and improved waterproofing, but fundamental issues related to power and chassis design remained unresolved. The Amphicar served as a significant test case for regulatory bodies. It was often caught between the jurisdiction of automotive safety standards, like seatbelt requirements, and marine regulations, like PFD storage, highlighting the difficulty in regulating true dual-purpose vehicles. Despite the struggles, the Amphicar never lost its high-profile, fun image. It remained synonymous with unconventional luxury and engineering audacity, overshadowing its financial and mechanical flaws in the public eye. By the late 1960s, the writing was on the wall. Production volumes were too low to sustain the factory overhead. From 1961 to 1968, production figures peaked at around 1,500 units in the best year, but quickly tapered off. As the decade drew to a close, a new set of stringent U.S. regulations loomed, rules concerning emissions and vehicle safety that the small German manufacturer was simply not equipped to meet, setting the stage for the final production halt.
The true fascination of the Amphicar lies not in its sales success, but in the specific engineering compromises and ingenious solutions necessary to make the Model 770 function effectively in two completely different environments, road and water. The foundation of the Amphicar's dual identity was its unique drivetrain. It used the standard 4-speed manual gearbox for driving the rear wheels, but power could also be selectively routed to the rear-mounted propellers via a separate reduction gearbox. This dual-mode transmission was operated by two levers, the conventional floor-mounted shift for road gears and a secondary, water-resistant lever that engaged the propellers, allowing the driver to select forward, reverse, or neutral for marine operation. For water propulsion, power was transmitted from the reduction gearbox to a pair of counter-rotating twin propellers. These propellers were crucial for stability and thrust, ensuring that the car could maintain a straight course and maneuver reasonably well on the water. The propellers were individually reversible, meaning the driver could use differential thrust, pushing one forward and the other reverse, to pivot the car in a small radius on the water, a feature often needed when docking. Steering in the water was primarily achieved using the front wheels, which acted as rudders. The turning radius was poor compared to a conventional boat,
but the front wheels provided sufficient directional control at the vehicle's low water speed. The chassis design was dominated by the need for flotation. The Amphicar utilized a strong unibody steel hull, reinforced by internal bulkheads. The high-set body provided crucial freeboard, the distance between the waterline and the deck, essential for surviving minor waves. Watertight integrity was maintained by the use of specially designed thick rubber seals around the forward doors, the bonnet, and the engine cover. While effective when new, these seals were susceptible to wear and required constant inspection and replacement. Any water ingress was managed by a single, small manual bilge pump located near the driver's seat. While adequate for minor splashes, the pump was often criticized for being too small to cope with significant water taken on during rough conditions. The car's mechanical components needed protection from water and sand. The wheel hubs, suspension joints, and propeller shaft couplings were all sealed and required the tedious, mandatory post-water greasing to prevent rapid corrosion, a maintenance step few owners consistently performed. To protect the engine from flooding or spray, the Triumph 1200 engine was fed air through a high-set air intake system. The engine bay itself was relatively exposed, relying on the sealing of the rear hood and the placement of critical electrical components higher up. The wheels and tires themselves were unique. While standard in size, the hubs were specially sealed. They were essential on land, but in water they served a vital secondary function. The displacement of the tires contributed significantly to the vehicle's total buoyancy. The suspension had to be highly versatile. It was conventional for a small car of the era: independent front suspension with coil springs and semi-elliptic leaf springs at the rear, but the system was engineered to handle the constant transitions between road loads and water impacts. A unique safety feature designed by Trippel was the high ground clearance. This was necessary for driving down steep ramps and banks to enter the water without grounding the propellers or damaging the watertight hull. The Amphicar's complex structure also made it heavy. At nearly 1,850 pounds, the 43-horsepower engine struggled, resulting in the car's sluggish 0 to 60 miles per hour time of over 28 seconds, a significant trade-off for its amphibious capability. The design required the transmission to be engineered with additional seals and bearings to manage the power splitting and the constant exposure to water. This complexity contributed significantly to the vehicle's high manufacturing cost and eventual discontinuation. The fuel tank also needed specialized engineering. It was pressurized to prevent water ingress and ensure the fuel delivery system worked consistently, even when the car was partially submerged or rocking in waves. Despite the compromises, the Amphicar was a feat of integrated engineering. It managed to successfully blend two opposing requirements: the streamlined performance of a road vehicle and the watertight durability of a boat. This inherent duality became the ultimate paradox. Every feature that made it a decent boat, the heavy hull, the seals, the high clearance, made it a poor car, and vice versa. It was a vehicle that specialized in being mediocre at everything. Ultimately, the high engineering cost, the complexity, and the owner maintenance burden proved unsustainable, but the mechanical ingenuity behind the Amphicar remains a testament to Trippel's vision.
Despite the initial fanfare and global curiosity, the Amphicar's commercial viability began to falter critically in the late 1960s. The combination of high production costs, low volume sales, and the owner maintenance burden created an unsustainable business model. The crucial market was the United States, but this market also delivered the fatal blow. In 1968, the U.S. government enacted two highly stringent pieces of legislation that revolutionized vehicle manufacturing: the Clean Air Act and the forthcoming Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, or FMVSS. The existing Amphicar was simply not designed to meet the rigorous new U.S. emission standards. The small, low-powered Triumph engine would require expensive re-engineering and the addition of smog control equipment, significantly increasing production cost and cutting into the already meager performance. Simultaneously, the new U.S. safety standards mandated features like improved crash integrity, revised lighting, and standardized seating structures, all requiring costly retooling and redesigns that the small, struggling Amphicar Corporation could not afford. The company faced a strategic dilemma: meet the new U.S. regulations with massive investment, or exit the market that represented over 90% of its sales. The investment required was estimated to be greater than the company's total annual revenue. Faced with this impossibility, the Amphicar Corporation made the painful decision to cease production. The last full model year was 1967, though a small number of cars were assembled in 1968 using remaining parts. The final official factory-produced Amphicar, a total of 3,878, rolled out of the assembly plant in 1968. This small number contrasts sharply with the volumes required to amortize the complex tooling costs. The complexity of the dual drivetrain was the financial undoing. The specialized hull, the twin propellers, the two gearboxes, and the numerous seals resulted in a per-unit cost far higher than the final retail price could sustain, leading to persistent financial losses. The cessation of production was not a formal bankruptcy, but a gradual winding down of operations. The German government, which had provided some initial financial support, was unwilling to bail out a niche luxury item facing crippling regulatory hurdles. A peculiar consequence of the production halt was the surplus of parts. The manufacturer had built up a large stock of parts anticipating high sales volumes and long-term service needs. This created an ironic post-production benefit for future collectors. The company briefly attempted to pivot its focus to other Trippel-designed vehicle concepts, including larger, more powerful amphibious trucks, but none gained the necessary commercial traction to replace the Amphicar revenue stream. The distributor in the United States, facing a massive drop in supply, continued to sell the remaining inventory of newly imported and stored cars well into 1969 and 1970, often with minor modifications to meet state-level regulations. The very last Amphicar to be sold new was in 1970. After this point, all remaining parts and archives were secured, paving the way for the later emergence of the specialized collector's market. The failure of the Amphicar to meet the new regulations highlighted the growing power of centralized U.S. government oversight, which effectively created a barrier to entry for small, niche foreign manufacturers. Hans Trippel himself eventually moved away from consumer vehicles, although he continued to consult on military and industrial amphibious designs, applying the lessons learned from the Model 770's mechanical successes and commercial failures. The Amphicar proved that while the technology was feasible, the commercial proposition was flawed. The car appealed to a very small segment willing to tolerate poor road performance and high maintenance costs for the sake of novelty.
The financial impact was significant enough that the Industrial Werke Karlsruhe eventually returned to its core business, having learned a costly lesson in the specialized, high-risk world of amphibious leisure vehicles. Despite the brief production life, the Amphicar left an indelible mark on automotive history. Its audacious design and the simple, fun execution of its function solidified its reputation as a unique classic. The very fact that only 3,878 units were built contributed paradoxically to its long-term cult status. The rarity and the historical context ensured that those surviving units would become highly prized collectibles. The cessation of sales marked the end of the civilian amphibious mass-market dream, leaving the Amphicar as the sole product of its kind, a beautiful failure born of bold engineering and thwarted by regulatory reality.
The Amphicar's commercial failure was overshadowed by its immediate success as a cultural icon. From its launch, the vehicle was not seen as serious transportation, but as the ultimate gadget, granting it significant, enduring status in film, television, and high society. The most significant political visibility came from the U.S. White House. President Lyndon B. Johnson, known for his colorful personality, purchased one for his Texas ranch in 1965 and often used it to entertain and prank his political guests. Johnson's famous prank involved speeding toward a lake while shouting that the brakes had failed, terrifying his passengers before smoothly transitioning into the water. This association cemented the Amphicar's image as a playful novelty among the powerful. The Amphicar's dual nature made it perfect for Hollywood. It featured prominently in the popular 1967 spy film, The Million Eyes of Sumuru, where it played a practical role in escaping a perilous situation, enhancing its image as a sophisticated spy gadget. In the popular television show The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the Amphicar made a cameo, further linking it to the glamorous world of secret agents and high-tech equipment, a connection that thrilled the public imagination in the 1960s. The car was heavily utilized in magazine advertising throughout the early 1960s, always emphasizing the leisure, novelty, and freedom associated with the ability to drive anywhere. The marketing avoided technical specifications and focused entirely on the lifestyle. This media exposure led to a phenomenon where the Amphicar became a status symbol of eccentricity and wealth. It signaled that the owner had enough disposable income to buy a vehicle that prioritized fun over practicality. The paradox of the Amphicar was that its poor performance on both land and water was generally forgiven because of its novelty. Its slow acceleration and vague steering were simply part of the fun of driving a boat on the road. Even after production ceased in 1968, the Amphicar continued to appear in local news reports whenever an owner performed a public water entry, keeping the car in the public consciousness long after it disappeared from showrooms. In the 1970s, as the initial sheen of novelty wore off, the Amphicar's value plummeted. Many were abandoned due to corrosion and the high cost of maintaining the complex, sealed mechanical components. However, this decline was brief. By the late 1980s, a dedicated collector base began to emerge. Enthusiasts recognized the Amphicar as a unique piece of automotive history, and values began a slow, steady climb.
The fact that the U.S. distributor had acquired a large stock of original spare parts proved to be a lifesaver for this emerging collector market, ensuring that even decades later, rusted or damaged vehicles could be restored using authentic components. The unique mechanical and legal status of the Amphicar continued to amuse regulators. Owners had to possess both a valid driver's license and, depending on the state or country, a boating license to operate it legally. For much of the 1980s, the Amphicar was a fixture at classic car shows, where it often attracted the largest crowds, demonstrating that its appeal lay in its audacity rather than its mechanical brilliance. The car was also a visual shorthand for the optimistic, futuristic design ethos of the 1960s. A decade that imagined a seamless technological integration that the Amphicar literally embodied. Hans Trippel's earlier military design work gave the car a certain technical legitimacy, even if the civilian application was commercially flawed. It was, in its heart, a scaled-down, civilianized version of robust wartime engineering. The small size of the Amphicar, combined with its high freeboard, made it look deceptively cute on the road, adding to its charismatic appeal compared to larger, more aggressive sports cars of the era. The story of the Amphicar became a cautionary tale in business schools, a product with unique features but a fundamentally flawed value proposition, ultimately killed by regulatory burden and high manufacturing costs. By the end of the 1980s, the Amphicar had fully transitioned from a quirky used car to a highly desirable niche collectible, setting the stage for the dedicated restoration and club culture that defines its modern existence. The final cultural legacy of the production era is clear. The Amphicar was a four-wheeled symbol of the American dream of freedom and fun, proving that sometimes the greatest failures make the most memorable classics.
The 1990s marked the permanent transition of the Amphicar from a defunct vehicle into a highly sought-after piece of history. The rarity, with only 3,878 total units built and an estimated fewer than 600 surviving today, guaranteed its status as a premium collectible. The primary force driving its endurance is the International Amphicar Owners Club, or IAOC, formally established in the 1980s. This organization is essential for maintaining the community, sharing technical knowledge, and organizing amphibious events. The IAOC hosts an annual tradition, the Swim-In event, at the Grand Lake St. Mary's in Ohio, which serves as the largest gathering of these unique vehicles globally. This event highlights the practical, fun utility of the cars for enthusiasts. The restoration of an Amphicar presents unique challenges that differentiate it from conventional car restoration. The most significant hurdle is tackling corrosion, particularly in the lower internal bulkheads and areas where the dual drivetrain penetrates the hull. Because the car functioned as a boat, rust often occurred from the inside out due to trapped water, sand, and salt, requiring extensive metalwork to re-establish the structural integrity and watertight seals of the unibody hull. Fortunately, the large surplus of original mechanical components left over from the 1968 production halt remains available. This supply is crucial for authentic restorations of seals, propeller shafts, and specialized gearbox parts.
The availability of these new old stock parts means that a restored Amphicar can be returned to its original, fully amphibious condition, ensuring the continued use of the vehicle in both its intended elements. As the years have passed, the value of Amphicars has appreciated significantly. Fully restored examples in perfect running and swimming condition routinely fetch prices in excess of $100,000, far surpassing their original 1960s retail price. This high valuation reflects not only the rarity, but the complexity of restoration and the vehicle's cultural significance as the only mass-produced amphibious car. It is a unique entry in any serious collector's portfolio. Modern technology has slightly eased the maintenance burden. Enthusiasts often upgrade the simply bilge pump to a more powerful electric unit and use modern corrosion-resistant coatings to better protect the chassis from water exposure. The Amphicar has found a niche role as a quirky attraction in many museums and theme parks worldwide, where it serves as a fun and tangible representation of 1960s technological optimism and design audacity. The Amphicar's story continues to inspire new, if non-commercial, amphibious prototypes. However, the regulatory and financial hurdles that killed the Model 770 in 1968 continue to prevent any large-scale consumer revival. The legacy of Hans Trippel endures primarily through the Amphicar. His earlier, more rugged military designs were successful, but it is the charming, unique Model 770 that cemented his name in automotive folklore. The Triumph engine, while mechanically reliable, is often a point of restoration focus. Enthusiasts sometimes choose subtle modifications to improve the car's sluggish road performance without compromising its original aesthetic. For contemporary owners, the enjoyment is less about performance and more about the experience of the transition, the moment of driving down a boot ramp and floating away, an experience only the Amphicar can deliver. In 2015, the Amphicar received renewed international attention during a high-profile auction sale, confirming its status as a blue-chip classic car and ensuring media coverage whenever one changes hands. The Amphicar remains a powerful statement about specialization. It proved that a vehicle can successfully exist in two realms, even if the commercial cost for that duality proved too high for the mass market. The meticulous care and dedication shown by the global collector community has turned a product that was a financial failure into an ongoing, lively cultural success story. From the 70-mile-per-hour promise on land to the 7-knot reality on water, the Amphicar defined a moment in time when anything seemed possible with 4 wheels and a hull. The small, cheerful Amphicar, floating defiantly on water in 2025, stands as a unique, enduring testament to Hans Trippel's wild yet realized dream of automotive freedom, guaranteeing its place as an unrepeatable chapter in transportation history.